Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Always ready to learn something new.
Well, today we're going to be talking about teenage smoking.
Okay.
But, and here's the twist,
Yeah.
we're not just looking at the usual suspects like peer pressure or,
Yeah.
individual genetics.
Right.
This is about how your friend's gene
Oh, interesting.
might actually influence you.
I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's kind of a wild concept, right?
It is.
We're diving into a study from Princeton University, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences.
Okay.
And it really challenges our traditional understanding of nature versus nurture.
I can see how that would be.
So before we get too deep into the weeds,
Sure.
let's just kind of level set, right?
Yeah.
Most of us know that teenagers are especially vulnerable to starting smoking.
Yeah. Definitely a time of, well, experimentation.
Exactly, and we usually chalk it up to peer pressure.
Yeah. Hanging out with the wrong crowd.
Right, or maybe some genetic predisposition.
Yeah.
But this Princeton study, it kind of brings those two things together in a way that I never really considered.
Oh, how so?
Well, they introduced this idea of metagenomics.
Yeah, the genomics.
Yeah, it's basically looking at the genetic landscape of the people around us.
So, like, our genes are interacting with the genes of our friends.
It's kind of like that, almost as if we're all swimming in this sea of genetic information, and it's influencing us in subtle ways.
That's a really interesting way to put it.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I mean, we talk about our environment shaping us,
Right.
but we don't usually think about our genetic environment.
Exactly. It's like,
Mm.
imagine being in a room full of people speaking different languages.
Okay, yeah.
You might start picking up a few phrases just from being exposed to them.
Right, just through osmosis.
And maybe it's the same with genes,
I see what you mean.
We're picking up little bits and pieces of genetic information from the people we spend time with.
That's fascinating.
And this study specifically looked at something called polygenic scores
Yeah.
at the grade level.
So, like, how likely someone is to pick up a certain trait.
Yeah, you can think of it as a kind of like a genetic scorecard for a specific trait,
Okay.
in this case, smoking.
Right.
And they looked at this at the grade level.
Interesting. Why the grade level?
While they assume the grade assignments are mostly random, right?
Makes sense.
So it kind of creates this natural experiment
I
to
see.
see if there were any interesting patterns.
So what did they find? Does being around a bunch of kids with a high smoking score make you more likely to smoke?
Well, that's the crazy part. They found that being in a grade with a higher average polygenic score for smoking
Uh-huh.
did actually increase a teenager's chance of smoking.
Oh, wow.
And get this, the effect was even stronger
Wrong.
than their own individual polygenic score.
So it's not just about my genes, it's about the genes of the people around me.
Exactly. It's like peer pressure on a whole new level.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It really is. I mean, it makes you wonder about the power of just being in a certain environment.
Yeah, and how much control we really have.
If even our friends' genes can be influencing us.
It really blurs the lines between nature and nurture, doesn't it?
It does, and it definitely raises some questions about, well, personal responsibility.
It does make you think.
Like, if we're being influenced by factors beyond our control,
Right, like our friends' genes.
then how much agency do we really have in our choices?
That's a tough one.
It's almost like we're part of this invisible web of genetic connections
Right.
that are shaping our choices in ways we never even realized.
Wow. That's a powerful image.
It is, and it makes you wonder what else we might be influenced by that we're completely unaware of.
You're really making me think here. It's a little freaky when you stop and really think about it.
It is. It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
about other behaviors too. Like,
Mm.
if this is true for smoking, could our friends' genes also be influencing, I don't know,
Yeah.
like our taste in music,
Oh, interesting.
or whether we're
Yeah.
risk takers or not?
I mean, it's possible, right?
Yeah.
We know genes play a role in all sorts of things.
Right, and the researchers in this study, they actually think
Uh-huh.
that this concept of metagenomics
Right.
could apply to a whole range of behaviors.
Really?
Yeah, from, how well we do in school
Oh, wow.
to even our susceptibility to certain diseases.
That's a pretty big deal.
It is. It really opens up a whole new way of thinking about,
Yeah.
how we're influenced by the people around us.
It's like we've been so focused on individual factors
Right.
that we've kind of overlooked this whole other layer of influence.
It makes you wonder, too, about, like,
Yeah.
social interventions.
Oh, right.
If we know that certain individuals might have a disproportionate genetic influence
Yeah.
on those around them,
Mm-hmm.
should we be approaching things differently?
I mean, it's a really interesting question, right? Like, how do you even begin to address something like that?
Exactly, and that's where the researchers bring up this idea of uh, bad apple theory.
Yeah. So they suggest that a small group of students
Okay.
with a high genetic predisposition to smoking
Mm-hmm.
can actually have a much bigger influence
Hmm.
on their peers than, we might have thought.
So, like, one person with a really high smoking score
Right.
could influence a whole group.
Exactly. It's almost like their genes are kind of amplifying the risk for everyone around them.
That makes sense, especially if you think about how impressionable teenagers are.
And the researchers also found
Yeah.
that those with a low genetic risk for smoking don't
Yeah.
seem to have a protective effect.
Oh, so that's not like they cancel out the bad apples.
No, not really.
Why do you think that is?
Well, they speculate that it might be
Yeah.
because smoking is such a visible behavior.
Oh, that's true.
It's hard to,
Yeah.
resist something when you're constantly surrounded by it. Right, like if everyone's doing it, it
Exactly.
becomes more normal.
It kind of normalizes the behavior.
Makes you wonder about other things, too.
Like what?
Well, like, we always say you should surround yourself with people who have the qualities you want to cultivate,
Yeah.
but maybe there's a genetic component to that as well.
So choosing your friends is kind of like choosing your genetic destiny.
It's a bit of a stretch, but I see what you mean.
Yeah, this whole thing just really makes you question
Mm.
how much of our behavior is shaped by factors that are, well,
Yeah.
totally outside of our control.
It definitely challenges our idea of free will, doesn't it?
It does, but at the same time,
Yeah.
it doesn't take away the importance of individual choice.
Right.
It just adds another layer of complexity
It does.
to understanding why we do the things we do.
And maybe helps us be more understanding of other people's choices.
Exactly. Like, instead of just judging someone for
Right.
smoking,
Yeah.
maybe we should consider the genetic environment
Mm-hmm.
that they're exposed to
It's like we're all products of our environment.
to some extent.
But now we're talking about a whole new kind of environment.
Right, a genetic
And
environment.
maybe if we understand that environment better,
Yeah.
we can start to create healthier spaces for everyone.
Okay, so now I'm really curious, how do we actually use this information,
Yeah.
to create healthier environments?
Well, I think it starts with awareness, right? Just recognizing that this is a factor.
Right.
And then maybe instead of just focusing on individual interventions,
Mm-hmm.
we start thinking about how to create social ecosystems
Okay.
that make it easier for people to make positive choices.
So, like, instead of just telling people to quit smoking,
Yeah.
we create environments where it's less likely they'll start in the first place.
Exactly.
I like that. It's kind of like
Yeah.
using this knowledge to design environments that nudge people in the right direction.
Instead of just relying on them to resist temptation on their own.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be about,
Yeah.
preventing negative behaviors.
Right.
What if we could create environments that actually foster
Uh-huh.
positive behaviors?
Oh, like what?
Like, imagine schools or workplaces
Okay.
where healthy habits and positive traits
Yeah.
were almost contagious.
I love that idea. It's like creating a positive feedback loop.
Exactly, where the environment itself is supporting people to be their best selves.
That's really powerful.
It is, and it makes you wonder
What?
what a metagenomically optimized world would look like.
That's a great question.
It's like taking all this knowledge about our interconnectedness
Yeah.
and using it to build a world
Yeah.
where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
I think that's a goal worth striving for.
It is, and it really makes you think about the power of just being in the right environment.
It does.
We've talked a lot about the science,
Yeah.
but I want to bring it back to a personal level.
Okay.
For our listeners, have you ever felt pressured to do something
Uh-huh.
you weren't entirely comfortable with?
I think we all have at some point.
Right, and think about the people who were around you at the time.
Okay.
Did any of them have a family history
Yeah?
of that behavior?
Interesting. Yeah, it's crazy how these things can kind of run in families.
It is, and it just makes you wonder,
Mhm.
how much of what we consider personal choice
Right.
is actually shaped by,
By these hidden influences.
yeah, the invisible forces around us.
Yeah, the genes we inherit, the people we spend time with.
It's like we're all part of this grand experiment,
Totally.
whether we realize it or not.
I like that.
Each of us contributing to the,
Mhm.
the metagenomic environment,
The metagenomic
of
environment.
those around us.
It's kind of poetic when you think about it.
It is, and that environment is
Yeah.
it's constantly evolving.
Right. As we meet new people, form new relationships,
Exactly.
our influence is always changing.
It is. It's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it.
It is.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation.
It really is.
I have to admit,
Yeah.
I'm looking at my own social circle a little differently now.
I think we all are.
Like suddenly I'm aware of this whole
Yeah.
other layer of influence.
This hidden dimension.
Yeah, it's like, who am I influencing?
And who's influencing you?
Right. Exactly.
It's a two-way street.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
All right. I'm listening.
We've talked a lot about, the
games.
potential downsides,
The bad apples.
right, the bad apple theory and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the flip side?
Oh, you mean like the good apples?
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
if we can be influenced
Mm-hmm.
toward negative behaviors,
Yeah.
couldn't we also be nudged
Mm-hmm.
toward positive ones?
I mean, theoretically, yeah. If our genes can influence each other in negative ways, there's no reason why they couldn't also influence us in positive ways.
Imagine if we could create communities
Okay.
where healthy habits and
Yeah.
positive traits were almost contagious.
Like a ripple effect of good vibes.
Exactly. Wouldn't that be amazing?
It would. It would be like harnessing the power of our genes for good.
It's like taking all this knowledge about our interconnectedness
Right.
and using it to build a world
Yeah.
where we all have the opportunity to thrive.
That's a great goal.
Well, folks, that's it for this deep dive.
Another one down.
We hope this episode has sparked some new ideas
Absolutely.
and maybe even changed the way you think about the power of your social circle.
You're not just choosing who you spend time with.
Right.
You're also choosing the metagenomic environment that shapes you.
And who knows, maybe you're even a good apple for someone else,
Ooh, I like that.
influencing them in ways you never imagined.
It's a nice thought.
It is. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning.
And keep those brains buzzing.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.